film.
I'm McKenna Brown's father, and she was bullied to death.
This all happened over a course of less than 5 days.
She spent Tuesday, Wednesday with the girls. By the Sunday morning, she decided to take her own life.
This is a tragic ambush. Cyberbullying, this is an epidemic, and it doesn't just happen to other people. The warning signs that every parent needs to know. We hear stories on the news about children and teens being bullied, sometimes to death. You think that that's just other people that you see on the news, but I'm telling you, this is an epidemic, and it doesn't just happen to other people. And that's what we're continuing to talk about today. Yesterday, we met an incredible mother, Antoinette, who did everything right, but still tragically lost her 13-year-old daughter, Muffin, when she took her own life after being taunted, teased, and bullied relentlessly. Here's that mother's story of love and loss.
Every 90 minutes, someone between the ages of 15 and 24 takes his or her life.
This morning, we're hearing from 4 people whose children died by suicide.
Dr. Phil, my name is Antoinette, and my daughter was bullied to death. I thought all Muffin needed was love and support from her family, but the hate of her enemies was stronger than her mother's love.
This last year, her 13-year-old daughter, Tiara, who she called Muffin, took her own life after she says that she was relentlessly bullied by her schoolmates. How do you feel as you sit there and look at these beautiful pictures of your daughter so vibrant and alive?
I feel angry. I feel cheated. I feel like she wasn't given a fair chance. She always thought she was so different. And she's like, I know I'm weird. And I always told her, you're not weird, you're just you.
You say that she was actually taunted, specifically, some by known bullies and some anonymously. How was she taunted?
Well, I learned through this experience that there are spam pages on Instagram that you can make, and you can pretty much post anything you want. Someone snapped her picture from a distance, posted it, and all of the comments were all the kids just saying what she looks like. She was embarrassed of her teeth. Just got her braces. She wanted the braces off because she was like, they talked about my teeth.
They just created this page where people would just go on and just say ugly things.
Once they noticed that she was uncomfortable with them saying something, they knew that that was their ammunition.
You approached one mother to talk about it, right?
The mom did not want to hear it.
It seemed like this group was just on a mission to break Muffin.
It got very vicious when I started reporting it to the school officials, letting them know something needs to be done about these little girls. Now, what the school did on their end, I'm not sure. Nothing changed.
Muffin was an inspirational little girl. I can't let my daughter's death be in vain.
Antoinette, tell me how you're feeling right now.
I'm feeling broken.
Tell me about the Saturday that this happened.
Muffin's energy was off, and she showed me something online. So I asked her not to entertain anything online any longer. When I walked in my room, my daughter had took her own life. I'm not understanding what's happening in this moment because I never expected this, and I couldn't even save her life.
Have you talked to any of these girls that were doing what they were doing?
Not a one. When the detective asked me, did any one of them tell her to take her life? Because if they didn't, there's nothing we can do. I never thought for 1 second she had a thought of taking her life.
You're going to create meaning out of this.
I'm going to do my best to make a change. I have strength. This doesn't stop here. I'm going to be her movement. I'm going to be her voice, and I'm going to remain Muffin strong. I'm going to be strong for her and every little girl or boy that's exactly like her. I have to speak.
Muffin was an amazing little girl. All Muffin wanted was to have friends and be accepted by her peers.
And I don't really care if nobody else believes.
Let's bring awareness to Muffin's story to save someone else's child.
Today, we have yet another family affected by this horrific bullying epidemic. Cheryl and Hunter's 16-year-old daughter took her own life just 2 months ago after they claimed she was bullied for less than 5 days from the start of the bullying, when her supposed friends turned on her until that fatal morning.
I'm McKenna Brown's father, and she was bullied to death.
I'm coming to you live from her room. I thought it only fitting. McKenna was a people person. There were a group of her friends that had basically turned on her and ganged up on her, accusing her of breaking the girl code, and accelerated incredibly quickly. She went upstairs about 11 o'clock. So at some point between 3:30 and 7 the next morning, she decided that she couldn't take it anymore, and she took her own life.
Cheryl, Hunter, I'm glad to meet you both, but again, so sorry for your loss. I just, one thing you will not hear me say today is I know how you feel, because if you haven't been in your situation, you just can't know. I can't even pretend to know. It's been right at 2 months, correct?
Correct.
And this was something that neither of you had a clue to. There was no ramp up to this. There was nothing that gave you an indication that this was coming?
None. She spent Tuesday, Wednesday with the girls. By the Sunday morning, she decided to take her own life.
When you look back on this, were there red flags that you missed? Were there things that, if you had this to do over again, you would see something that you didn't see? Because I've been through the timelines. I've been through everything about this, and this is just this is a tragic ambush. And you tell me.
There were no red flags. There was no outward sign. I knew that there had been some boy drama that had started Tuesday evening, that had continued through the week. But for events to have unfolded the way they did, and for them to tragically come to an end the way they did in the wee hours Sunday morning, there was absolutely no inclination that that's where we were headed.
And she was how old exactly?
16.
2 days before her, a month before her 17th birthday.
Right. And so to say there was boy drama is like, yeah.
Yeah, like saying that they're breathing.
Yeah, she's that age. Of course there's boy drama.
Right.
You say that she was bullied online and via text after the bullying online. What happened? How did this go from being with supposed friends to a turn to the point that she felt backed into a corner?
As Hunter had mentioned, Tuesday evening, she was with girlfriends out on the beach. One of her friends, her ex-boyfriend, was on the beach there with her. She had known him for a couple of years as well. They had dated 2 years earlier. And they started talking and flirting with each other. McKenna wanted to make sure that her friend was okay, didn't want it to be awkward. Had asked her if she would be okay with them talking. Wednesday evening, when a group of them went to the causeway, and she continued hanging out with him, and it obviously wasn't okay with this person. She went and spent the night with a couple of the girlfriends that evening, and they dropped her off at our house on Thursday. Later on that evening, she started getting a barrage of texts and phone calls from the girl with the ex-boyfriend. She tried to kind of distance herself and not respond. Friday evening, she sent a text to this person saying that, if I crossed the line, I'm sorry. She she sent that for her just so that she'd feel better, kind of park it there. It didn't matter how she responded, but she was, owning it if she crossed the line. The next day, we spent the day together, talking through it. We were very close. She was my best friend. And we went to dinner, and she looked down at her phone. She had been ignoring her phone most of the day, just trying to put some distance between it. And she looked at her phone and the Snap map. She looked down and she saw the 4 friends that had been sending her texts and phone calls and, snaps. They were all together at her friend's house, just a short ways from our house. And they'd come from fair distance all to be together.
You said this is just a few intersections away.
Like 5 traffic lights away. Yeah. So she saw on the Snap map that they were all together. And her face just kind of went white. Like, I feel like that was a turning point for her. She had been getting all of these, correspondences and trying to ignore them. She saw that, and she just, we went home that evening. We watched a movie together, again, just talking. And she decided that, we were going to church the next morning. She said she was going to go upstairs and wash her hair and clean up her room. And she might be back down. She didn't come back down, and I didn't think anything of it because, I'd see her the next morning for church. And I went upstairs the next morning and opened the door, and she was on the ground face down, and I thought she was sleeping. She could sleep anywhere. She truly could sleep anywhere. And so I didn't realize initially what I was looking at. And I went over to her and went to turn her over, and she was cold and stiff, and I knew that she was gone.
And in that moment, when you touched her and knew that she was gone, take me through that moment. Did you know what had happened at that point?
I knew that. I didn't know exactly what happened, no. And she left a letter that was very thoughtful and didn't call any of these people out. I knew that it had to have had something to do with these girls. I had no idea to what degree. A lot of what we learned and pieced together after
it came afterwards.
Was after the funeral even. And friends that got these groups of texts that these girls sent to McKenna's teammates and friends in an effort to humiliate her and embarrass her, shared really personal and private information with her that she had been raped and statutorily raped at the age of 14. That was information that was put out there, and it was more than she could handle.
This all happened over a course of less than 5 days. And I want to talk about the power of that and how dangerous this can be and how tragic it was for this family when we come back.
We had no idea about the rape. She'd kept that secret to herself for 3 years. And all of a sudden, they were sharing it with everyone.
And then proceeded to try and cancel her on social media.
Tomorrow, parents battle.
Parents should be involved in every major decision in their children's lives.
You're taking books away from my kids.
Over woke school curriculum.
It's unfortunate that many LGBTQ books have so much sexual violence in them.
That is a flat-out lie.
None of the books in my classroom have any sexual violence.
What makes you think you know better than a parent about gender or anything else? That's tomorrow. Then on Thursday, surviving inflation. We're talking about actual strategies.
You need to be one step ahead of the airlines.
That's like cutting your food budget almost in half. Little things to save big bucks. That's being gossiped about, threatened with cancellation, being called out for your mistakes and shamed publicly, all different forms of bullying, and ones that Cheryl and Hunter claim their daughter was trying to cope with when she decided to take her own life. Your daughter got bombarded with this, and we said it was in less than 5 days, but when you realize at this age when a girl is really socially sensitive, mean, that's kind of her world, right? This is what defines her. And all of a sudden, there's this first betrayal, because that was a big thing, right?
It was huge.
Because these were girls that she was with.
She traveled with them extensively, and for some, she'd known one for 8 years, a couple more for 4, one for 2, and they traveled extensively. Their families considered her one of their own. She spent weekends at their house, traveled with them, etc. I mean, they were very close. And we had no idea about the rape and/or statutory rape. She'd kept that secret to herself for 3 years, and all of a sudden, they were sharing it with everyone.
She then extends an olive branch, right? Mm-hmm. Which I've also read.
Right.
And it was it was clear that she was willing to say, okay, you know what? I'll just follow my sword here.
Yes.
Not even going to bore you with the facts. I'll just own this. She said, whatever. Sorry. And that just was fuel on the fire, right?
It was, because they took that text, coupled it with all the other texts, information, and then began to mass distribute it to an unknown number of teammates and friends, and then proceeded to try and cancel her on social media.
A week before this happened, you would have never, ever thought this could happen in your family to your daughter.
Absolutely.
I mean, you would have put yourself at the bottom of the list of someone that would be vulnerable to something like this.
We're talking about someone who, had just gotten her driver's license. We were negotiating to buy a car for her. She was going to drive her special needs sister and a friend to school. She changed her college plans because USF had just started a girls' hockey team. She's straight A student, scholar athlete, had, been to national championships twice, would have been 3 times, except for the fact of got canceled her first year because of COVID. Furthest thing from our mind. And she was one that people relied on. There was a girl she used to walk out to the parking lot because she was bullied. After we'd loaded her into the hearse, I was talking to 3 retirees from the fire department that I hadn't had a chance to talk to before the service. There was a girl that waited there patiently till I was done. She said, she'd been homeschooled until grade 8. And then she came to McKenna's middle school, and no one would talk to her. No one would give her the time of day. The only person that would speak to her was McKenna. And then she and McKenna wound up playing flag football in high school, and she led a very normal life.
Yeah.
She was the one that included people and looked out for people.
Who weren't included, people who were ready to quit, whether it be at the gym where she trained or, hockey or flag football. They would stay. She would, because of her, they would stay and they would persevere.
Oftentimes, the people that do this are ghosts. You don't know who they are. They're anonymous. They make up fake names and pages and stuff like this. In this case, you had relationships. You knew these people. You knew these parents. You knew these mothers. And bullies have parents. And when we come back, I want to ask Cheryl and Hunter what their interactions have been, what their feelings are, what their relations are with these parents. Because let me tell you something, bullies have parents, and it's parents' job to know what their kids are doing or not doing. And it's all of your job to know what your kids are doing or not doing. I want to talk about that when we come back, because that's hard to wrap my head around in this story. We'll be right back. You knew these parents. Nobody reached out to y'all.
It makes me angry that she couldn't have just given me a heads up that something was going on.
My guest today, Senator Scott Wiener.
Talking about safe sites for drug addicts to use.
Instead of someone using on the sidewalk, they'll use inside. In the 30 years they've been in operation around the world, there have been 0 overdose deaths.
One of my fears is it constitutes
McKenna was one of those people that people gravitated towards. Just true sunshine. She left an incredibly thoughtful letter, which is so typical of her. She didn't call anybody out. It was all about how much she loved us and how safe she felt at home. and that she was lacking a sense of belongingness outside of home. And there's just a lot of mean kids out there.
Well, Cheryl and Hunter claim their 16-year-old daughter, McKenna, was buried in shame when she took her own life after being bullied for less than 5 days. Now you say, how could that be? Well, let me tell you how it can be. You know, when somebody you're in a relationship says something to you, somebody you're invested in says something to you, it takes on a much heavier gravity than a stranger. That's why if your husband or wife or brother or sister, mother or father say something to you, it weighs much heavier than if somebody that's working at the 7-Eleven down on the corner says something to you. You don't know them. You're not invested in them. But when you're friends, when people that you have worked with, spent the night with, traveled with, shared things with, shared confidences with, all of a sudden turn on you, it matters to you. You start to question, what's happened here? Why have things gone off the rails? Did I not ever really have a real relationship? Was I fooling myself all of this time? Is there no loyalty? Was there not one person in this group, not anyone that would stand up for me or have my back? And it makes you question who you are. Well, you knew these parents. How do you feel that nobody reached out to y'all and said, hey, there's a squabble going on here, there's a problem, we need to bridge this?
Makes me angry that she couldn't have just given me a heads up that something was going on. But not only was she aware, but she was way too involved, come to find out.
Did these former friends come to the funeral?
They all came to the funeral.
Three.
I'm sorry, all but one came to the funeral.
And did they express their apologies, their remorse, their feelings? What would they say?
They didn't speak to us.
And at that point in time, we knew very little. We knew, we knew that she had been there. We knew that there was a bit of drama, that the detective left our house, went to their house. They were actually back at the beach by the time the detective got there. But we knew very little at the point of time in the funeral. At the funeral, we knew very little. It was only afterwards when teammates and friends began to come forward and, talk to us and forward the texts that were sent and, say that they'd reached out by phone or that they'd seen this on Snap or Instagram or whatever. That's the only reason we know any of this. If those girls had not been brave enough to come forward, we would have been completely oblivious to what had happened.
So some of the others did come forward and say, hey, that's how you got the text.
That's exactly it. They were courageous enough to come forward. They knew what was happening was wrong. And some of them had the wherewithal to screenshot some of the texts because, of course, all the social media had been deleted at that point. Mm-hmm. And they sent it to us. We were able to piece it together based on that.
And when you saw that, what did you think? Your daughter's now gone.
Yep.
And you read this onslaught that she's been under. What was your reaction?
I was devastated. It didn't have to end this way. This didn't have to play out this way.
Closed captioning provided by.
Yep.
And you read all of this onslaught that she's been under. What was your reaction?
I was devastated. I was already devastated. I was already in the fact, again, that the mom didn't pick up the phone, give me a heads up. It didn't have to end this way. This didn't have to play out this way.
And have you turned this over to the school? Have you turned it over to the team? Have you turned it over to the league, to all the entities that are involved with these girls over the years?
Many of her teammates and parents have filed complaints and grievances and to various
governing bodies.
Yeah, governing bodies of those teams. 3 of the 4 are currently suspended from team play pending appeal. There's another ongoing investigation going on right now looking at cyberbullying and also the breach of the student player code of conduct. They went to different schools. The school come to find out, there have been upwards of, 5 other kids who have taken their own lives over the last 7 years of her high school. 3 of whom were also scholar athletes. Wow. Had we known any of that information, those would have been opportunities for us to have had more conversations with McKenna about it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want it out there. They claim that they're protecting the other students. They don't want any copycats.
This happened in Florida, and in some states there are cybercrime units where you can go and file a complaint if there's a cybercrime that's taken place, including cyberbullying, but that's not the case in Florida, correct?
Correct. Cyberbullying is covered under the education code and can tie into ramifications at the school level. It's defined in the education code, but it's not a criminal offense. Cyber stalking is an act that can lead to a charge under the stalking. Stalking would be the offense, but because of what happened to McKenna, cyber stalking itself is not a crime. It's an act that can lead to a charge of stalking. But what happened to McKenna was so fast, and it's an act that can show stalking. There's no legal ramifications for what happened to McKenna because it happened so fast and that it doesn't rise to the crime of stalking.
Mm-hmm. So what you're left with are regulatory type things where complaints have been filed not just by you, but by others who find this so offensive and so objectionable that they're filing complaints on their own.
Correct.
That this is just something so toxic that it shouldn't be part of school, team, league, sports, anything that's going on. So others are offended by this as well.
Correct.
Cheryl and Hunter say that their grief feels numbing, insurmountable, because it's mixed with anger at the bullies, at their parents, at the whole situation. And I'm going to talk to them about that and what that process has to become when we come back. Tomorrow, parents battle.
Parents should be involved in every major decision in their children's lives.
You're taking books away from my kids.
Over woke school curriculum.
It's unfortunate that many LGBTQ books have so much sexual violence in them.
That is a flat-out lie.
None of the books in my classroom have any sexual violence.
What makes you think you know better than a parent about gender or anything else? That's tomorrow. Then on Thursday, surviving inflation. We're talking about actual strategies.
You need to be one step ahead of the airlines.
That's like cutting your food budget almost in half. Little things to save big bucks. That's Thursday. Well, I'm back with Hunter and Cheryl, and sadly, we're here talking about something that is not really isolated. We're talking about the death of their beautiful daughter, McKenna, and it comes on the heels of a 4-day concentrated onslaught of cyberbullying on really many different levels. It wasn't just, hey, we don't like you, or you're ugly, or whatever. They kind of turned over every possible attack angle that they could. You are clearly still in shock at this point, and it's hard to really progress through the grieving process when there's so much fight left in you about this, because there's a fight to be fought here, right? You feel like we're still fighting for our daughter.
Correct.
We're still fighting for some justice, some accountability, some way to bring people to account for what's been done here, because otherwise this just goes on like the other half dozen almost that have occurred.
Right, and some acknowledgement, accountability, and a promise to do better.
That, plus it's important for the girls that did come forward and had the strength to say this was wrong, this shouldn't have happened. You know, it shows them that this does not go unpunished completely, that there are repercussions for actions, regardless of how minor or slim they might be.
Look, this, as I say, you've got to find, Viktor Frankl said it pretty well in Man's Search for Meaning. He said, if you don't find some meaning to your suffering, it will make you insane. And there's no way to justify the price that you've had to pay here. There just absolutely is not. The price of losing your daughter, if you totally revolutionize cyberbullying and all of that, the price that you've had to pay is too high. No way, no how that is a good trade. But you didn't have that choice. And it has happened. And if something good can come out of it, then you can at least say, okay, this didn't happen in vain.
Right.
And it was interesting. The letter that she left, as you said, she didn't blame anybody. She didn't call anybody out.
She wiped her phone. She protected them. She wiped her phone.
Yeah.
She deleted everything from her phone except 100 pictures from when she was very, very young.
Yeah. And it was really more all about protecting you guys and your feelings.
And wanting to know that she knew that she was loved and felt safe at home and, loved us more than life itself.
Yeah. She wanted you to...
Right.
She was giving you permission to say this wasn't your fault.
Right.
I just can't imagine thinking her sitting there writing that letter knowing what she was about to do.
I know. And to know that it was between 3:30 and around 7:30 in the morning. And I had checked on her in the middle of the night and she was asleep, snoring in her bed. It was about 3:30 and, just the thought that she felt like this tsunami hit her and she had no other way out, didn't see any way out after having been so betrayed and abandoned and humiliated. And
of course, the irony in it all, as you say, if she could have held on for just a matter of weeks, she wasn't even going to be involved with the sport anymore.
She wasn't going to be on the travel team, the interstate team. She was going to continue to play high school hockey.
Yeah.
Tryouts, in fact, I got a reminder on my Google Calendar that the day that I went to pick her up from the funeral home that high school hockey tryouts were starting in an hour.
Yeah. Fair chance she would have made that team.
Definitely.
And those girls, as you said, they would have been out of her life.
And I think that's an important thing, too. Had she managed to persevere and hang on for another hour or another day or two, the content of those texts and what they had done would have come to light. And her teammates and those that came forward would have rallied around her. And those other girls would have been the ones that probably would have suffered repercussions.
Exactly.
Socially, not McKenna.
Are things happening at your child's school that you are against? Do you disagree with what's being taught? Are you shocked at the way teachers, administrators, or other parents are behaving? Are you afraid for your children? If so, we want to hear from you. Text PHIL, P-H-I-L. We all heard Antoinette's story, and she's hearing you. And what bothers me is I couldn't go to Central Casting and get better parents that had better relationships with their children.
We were close. We were all very close.
Well, it's more than that. It's like there's closeness. There are clear values. There's moral compass. There's role modeling. There's every aspect that you would want to have if you were going to say, look, here's what you strive for in a family. This is what you want. And in this day and time, that's not as common as you want it to be. But here you have families that are doing things right. And still this insidious electronic intrusion gets into where the kids live. And the number one need in anyone's life is acceptance. And it matters where the acceptance comes from, because it's like your daughter saying, Muffin saying, I don't want you to be my best friend. I want a real best friend, you know, a peer. And, you know, you guys can love her and all, but her peer group betrayed her. Her peer group turns on her. And that's a vulnerability that it's hard for parents to overcome.
Betrayal.
I know how hard it is. I know how difficult it is, but the message that you're using her life in such a positive way by talking about this, because parents at home can look at this and say, that can happen to them with her. I need to really pay attention to my child.
And we've had people who have reached out and said that, you know, they've actually spoken to their child since, and they've you know, they were struggling, and they've thanked us for, you know, because they possibly have intervened in the same type of situation.
McKenna's still helping people.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and you're making that happen now, and I cannot thank you enough for that.
It's not easy to talk about, but it's for her and to help other kids and parents out there, and encouraging their kids to speak up and speak out and seek help if they're struggling. And
your first instinct is to, you know, protect them even after they've passed, but then you realize that that's not really helping anyone, including her.
No, and she certainly is a shining light in the way she lived her life and the accomplishments that she had and the things that she did. And what I want to say to the audience next, and how everyone can help when we come back. Want and what you have. Do you feel like you're social, but yet you still feel lonely? How has this feeling affected your everyday life for the worse? Even if you've written to us before and haven't heard back, accept my apology and send us your email again. We do want to hear from you. Well, we're back talking with Hunter and Cheryl, who tragically lost their daughter, McKenna. And, you know, we've been talking about cyberbullying and the effect that it can have on your kids. And you just have to know what's happening to your kids on their devices. And you need to talk to your children about bullying, and not lecture them, but talk to them. And you need to inquire about what they've observed among their classmates and their personal friends, because you don't want them to be bystanders. You want them to be upstanders. You want to step up if there's something going on, and ask them if they're seeing something, what they think and what they feel about these things if they see bullying going on. And you need to ask them if they've ever been bullied or if they've ever bullied someone. And if your child is a bully, then you need to talk to them about that. And there are ways you can find out about that. If, you know, even at young ages, if they're coming home with things you didn't buy for them, if you hear them being really insensitive about other people, if all of a sudden a friend is excluded, there are warning signs, and you need to pay attention to those things. And I'm going to put a list of them on drphil.com so you can see them. And you need to point out the fine line between teasing and bullying. And that line is often determined by the bullied, not the bully. How's it being taken? And you want to do more listening than talking. I'd like to take just a moment for us to honor this wonderful young woman, McKenna, before we go.
McKenna was very compassionate, loving, caring, funny, witty. I just don't want her death to be in vain. I hear her and I feel her. I know that she's here, but selfishly, I want her here physically. I know that she is still all around me and looking out for me and our family.
You have to be patient with yourselves and recognize that when the battle gets fought, you need to give yourselves time to really grieve this beautiful daughter. And to you at home, I tell you, hug your loved ones and don't let the sun go down without telling those people in your life how you feel about them, because you really don't know if they're going to be here tomorrow or you're going to be here tomorrow. So don't let the sun go down another day without making sure you let the people in your life know how you feel about them. Don't take anything for granted, because you just never know. Thank you guys for having the courage to come here and share about this.
Thank you for having us.
Honor your daughter, McKenna.
Thank you for helping us get the word out there. More awareness.
All of you at home, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.